They're coming after your family home, and the attack on the middle class has just started. Do you want to build up some wealth and pass it on to your kids or grandkids? I think providing for your kids or grandkids is part of our DNA, our psyche. It's inbuilt and ingrained into us. We're all programmed to work all our lives, build up some wealth, hopefully own our own family home. We all know we can't take it with us, but we do expect to be able to pass it on to our family. If not, what is the point? I do not want the majority of my life earnings going back to the state when I pass. If you don't either, I think now is the time to start paying attention and keep watching. I have talked about the Great Reset in past videos where private property rights are being stripped away by governments. Governments are increasing their CPO powers, and there's a move towards the rental model. It is clear that a rental and state housing model is being pushed by the World Economic Forum and the Great Reset all over the world. It is clear for anyone that is watching that it's getting harder and harder to build or buy your own family home. Large funds and build to rent along with state housing seems to be the favourite option in many countries. When I talked about this in past videos, lots of comments asked, what happens if I already own my own family home? Will they try take it off? My response always has been, no, you'll be fine. However, your kids will be hit with an inheritance tax so high that they'll be forced to sell that home. And guess what? Last week, a tax commission in Ireland recommended to the government that capital gains relief for kids and grandkids should be reduced by about 90% over the next 5 to 15 years. Reducing the relief from 335,000 down to a very low figure of 36,000. That means that every kid or grandkid that inherits a house in Ireland in the future will have a considerable tax bill to pay, and in most cases they won't have the cash to pay that and they'll be forced to sell the house. If that generation is already generation rent, the idea of them ever owning a family home will be lost forever. Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael both strongly oppose this proposal and stated that such a scheme would never be introduced while they're in government. So why is this proposal even being put on the table? Who would actually want such a proposal? Who wants their family to pay more tax when they pass? And the big question is, who's driving this agenda? Years and years ago, when the Irish state was founded, many of the great houses and large land holdings were still controlled by English landlords. The Irish state came up with an inheritance tax on any properties over the equivalent of 500,000 at the time, which at the time really only applied to large estate homes or castles. The idea was the next generation of English lords would be taxed off the land and out of the country. And the tax did generally kind of work. It did remove many of the English landlords from Ireland. Many of them sold up. Some, the next generation, inherited the properties and had large tax bills. Some had to sell the properties to pay those tax bills. Others paid the tax bills and tried to hold on to the family homes. However, they didn't have enough cash to actually maintain and keep the family homes up, and eventually the next generation were forced to sell those homes. The drawback to the scheme was many of the families didn't have the cash to upkeep the properties and they fell into disrepair, and we have lost many of these great homes around Ireland. Anyone who watched Guy Ritchie's movie The Gentleman may recall Matthew McConaughey's line, or how he explains how he got in with the old English lords, and that is they were asset rich but cash poor. This is the case for many Irish families as well in terms of their family homes. They are asset rich but cash poor, and therefore there won't be any cash to pay the inheritance tax for many of these families. A few years ago, the inheritance tax relief was reduced from 500,000 down to 350,000. That was in line when the IMF were here, meaning that a lot of families, particularly around Dublin, were exposed to inheritance tax on their family home. But by driving the relief down to around 36,000 would mean that the vast majorities, or nearly every single family in Ireland, would be subject to this tax and will have to pay a considerable tax on inheriting any family home. So much so, in many cases, they will be forced to sell that family home. The question is, who would want this? Who would vote for this? Why is this idea even being proposed now? And why are we being softened up for this idea? It doesn't serve the family or the family unit. It stops and actually restricts families from growing their wealth. So who is driving this? Well, it follows the same tune as the World Economic Forum and the Great Reset from a property point of view. They want us all renting, or they want us being supported in state housing. As property becomes less affordable into the future, more and more people will end up renting. This proposal of reducing the inheritance tax relief will force more and more families to sell their family home in the future, and the only buyers at the time will be the state or large funds. The scary thing to think about is that this proposal came from an independent advisory group to the Irish government. They proposed about 200 new tax proposals. This was just one of them. Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael strongly objected to this idea. So who is driving this, or who is driving this independent body or this independent advisory group to make such a proposal? At this point, it looks extremely obvious that these independent advisory groups are being influenced by global bodies. But does the government even realise that these groups are being influenced by these bodies? The proposal to reduce the inheritance tax relief is being packaged in a way to increase tax revenue in the future due to an ageing population. So basically, the fading middle class will pay for everything, even in debt. The proposal is that tax relief will be slowly introduced over the next 5 to 15 years. Therefore, we're being slowly softened up for this proposal. If we're being slowly softened up for this, I think now is the time to start really thinking about how you can protect yourself and your family into the future. I know it's what I'll be doing. I'll be looking for ways to protect myself and my family into the future, and I will share those ideas with you on this channel, so make sure you subscribe. And managing taxes is an important way to protect yourself and your family into the future. King Charles inherited an entire kingdom last week and didn't pay any taxes. They have clearly worked out how important intergenerational wealth is, and I think so should you. In the US, many families use trust to pass on wealth and even family homes onto their children without paying any tax. Such options aren't available in Ireland at the moment, but I do think more and more people will be looking for creative ways to pass on wealth to their family, legal ways to pass on wealth to their family within the tax system. And I think more creative options will come about as these certain taxes are introduced, and I think it is important to keep aware of them. I do have other videos on this topic if you are interested in checking them out, but as always, thanks for watching, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel.